Hello everybody, I'm Lester Levitt. If you don't know by now, I'm Ed Rowe's husband, and I'm going to do 7 little segments here for this little retirement video so that you get to know the 7 different Eds that everybody else knows. You probably only know this Ed Rowe, the one who's worked at FAU. So there's a whole bunch of different Mr. Rows out there, and Mickey, and husband, and you're going to get to meet all of them, but let's start with segment number 1. I always start my classes at Coral Springs High School in August of every year with an introduction to Mr. Levitt and Mr. Rowe, because Mr. Levitt and Mr. Rowe have 2 very different histories in the United States. And I start my students by asking them a question: which one is the real history of the United States? These are all the accoutrements of my classroom. I have a picture of my husband and I have a calendar from the Equal Justice Institute that he gave me one year for Christmas. The GSA Club, Gay Straight Alliance Club, also meets in my classroom. I keep these kinds of signs around, and I keep signs around of my family, but that's another segment of the video. So let's get started. This is the Coral Springs High School GSA Club. There's a lot of gay kids. We tried to make them look like the rainbow for the yearbook photo. They all know Mr. Rowe. They know everything about Mr. Rowe, because I can't stop talking about Mr. Rowe. Mr. Rowe is also the most desired spouse of any chaperone for field trips when it is related to the chorus or the drama club. And when we were chaperones, you have to be in 3s, so that's why we have our 3rd person here, because the rule is when you're at Disney World, every year when we go up for the chorus, you have to travel around in 3s. So Mr. Rowe and Mr. Levitt went together with our 3rd companion, so we didn't violate the rules. This is the drama club, when Mr. Rowe and I went with the kids to St. Petersburg for the Thespians Festival. And this is us doing a karaoke party after everything went on to the teams meetings. So we tried to dress it up as much as we could for the end of the year karaoke party last year, because Mr. Rowe loves to sing. But this is how I start my class every year. So you have to understand that Mr. Rowe is part of Coral Springs High School, because I can't teach U.S. history without telling Mr. Rowe's history. So let me give you a brief introduction. My history is in Wikipedia. Deacon John Levitt came over 30 years before the Salem witch trials. He lived 30 miles on the other side of Boston, so he avoided all of that mess. My ancestors crossed the plains in covered wagons, and they moved to Utah because my great-great-great-grandfather had 3 wives and 26 children, and they had an extermination order against the Mormons in Missouri. Thank you, Governor Boggs. So when they wanted to become a state in Utah, my ancestors went to Canada so that they could keep their 3 wives and 26 children, which is where I was born. And Thomas Rowe Levitt has his own Wikipedia page. I am a privileged white boy, and if I taught high school based on my lived experience, it would be the privileged experience of a white boy. So this is a sign I put up every year on the first day of class. Privilege is when you think something is not a problem because it's not a problem to you personally. And that's when I introduce Mr. Rowe's history. It starts in 1619. Somebody won a Pulitzer Prize for doing that. And so his ancestors in around 1843 bought their own freedom, and they left the South and they went to Indiana, which is where his mother was raised and born, and his dad was born and raised, and they got married, and they had 2 little boys, and here's my sweet